Hi, I'm Brittany Ashley, your host of Breaking Norms, Building Dreams, your guide through this transformative journey in both business and life. This is your place crafted for dreamers, doers, or anyone who has been told they can't. Get ready as we challenge those narratives together. You're tuning in live to the United Public Radio Network, airing on 105.3 and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. We are streaming on all the popular platforms every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join me for a candid and thought-provoking conversation celebrating your unique journey because you are worth it. Happy Monday, everyone. Can you believe that we're here again yet today in April? I can't wrap my head around that we're in April. I was just having a conversation with my client like, oh, we are in April, aren't we? So welcome, everyone, to the show. Welcome to Breaking Norms, Building Dreams. I'm your host, Brittany Ashley, and we are broadcasting live today on United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network 105.3 and 107.7 in New Orleans. Get ready to escape the next hour as we break norms and build dreams today with Christine. I'm so excited to have you.
No problem. And well, thank you so much, Brittany. And I just want to say I'm so grateful to be here, and it's lovely that you've created this space for entrepreneurs and for business people to come and share their journey, and athletes. I really enjoyed watching your last show with MMA fighter, and it was really remarkable. So yeah, I'm honored to be here in this space, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you, and I'm happy that you got to tune in to Alana's show. It was my first Métis Indigenous person to the show, so I was so proud to kind of come in and also share my heritage a bit as well. So I was so excited for Alana to come in, and I'm so excited to have you to come in. Let's dive in on who you are. And I always mix up your name, so I apologize. Kristen,
you got it.
Want to make sure I have it right today. Let's do a quick little bio so the listeners know who you are, because I know who you are, and get in deeper on what you do and how the listeners can learn more about you. So, from athletes to executives and personal transitions like divorce or identity loss, high-stake perform goals, Kristen supports clients in building sustainable strength, clarity, and momentum. Kristen applies the tools for her REPS toolkits, which we'll dig in today and what that's all about. Across both her coaching practices, Live Your Prime, and focused on men's sexual health and rational performance and pure mind performance. I'm so excited to get more in depth with everything you do. There's so many onions to peel today, and I'm so excited to share with our listeners and people who are viewing us who you are. So maybe you can just dig in a little bit more who you are and how you started.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for that great intro. And so my work is very layered, which is why I love the title of your show, Breaking Norms. So I, launched into my own practice coaching after almost 20 years of executive coaching, and decided that I wanted to get a little bit deeper into the emotional, into the relational side of the coaching work. And so what I was seeing in top performing executives that I used to work with in the past is there were always these sort of barriers or things that were preventing them from living fully, happily, fully present, and fully successful in their lives. So that's where I made the pivot to layer in different modalities like therapeutic pieces and the sexual health piece, to roll that into a coaching umbrella to be able to meet people's needs and help them thrive. And as you know, Brittany, the kind of impetus for me jumping into this entrepreneurial role was really two pivotal points in my life. One was a big personal change, navigating the challenges of my own divorce and parenting my three boys on my own for the first time. And also a cycling crash, quite a dramatic one. I'm an athlete, and so I like to kind of push my limits. And I was fairly new to cycling after divorce, and I suffered a really big crash coming down a local mountain here in Vancouver, and I had permanent changes to my physical body. And it was sort of how I had to build my body back using my mind, using the power of the mind-body connection. And that kind of allowed me to springboard into the work that I'm doing today, which is largely on resilience, which is why we're here today to talk about that.
Yes, you have many different layers to what you do. So I'm so excited to dig in. Maybe we can kind of dive into what is resilience to you?
Yeah. And I love that you said to you, we all
Yeah.
have our different versions of the truth, right? And there's not just one story to this, but I'll share with you a little bit more about my journey and also my clients' journey towards resilience. But first, I want to share a story with you, Brittany, that I think you and some of your listeners can probably relate to. So I was dropping off my son this morning, the last one to go, my youngest at school. And as I was driving back, there was this little dog, and it was like hopping along the sidewalk in a kind of a funny way. It was a three-legged dog. And so it had three legs, and it was like this little chihuahua or something. And you should have seen the bounce on this thing. It's really bouncing along. And it made me smile, but it also brought me back to this memory that I had.
Mm.
During the pandemic, we had gotten a dog, like so many people.
Yeah.
And my youngest was about 6 years old. And so I was in the kitchen, and trying to keep a mindful eye on him, as you know, as a mom
Mhm.
to some youngsters. I wanted to watch him. The dog was quite tiny. It was little Westie named Smokey James. And so I'm watching him from the kitchen, and I'm like, what's he up to? And sure enough, he's doing something odd with the dog. So I just said, Tom, what are you doing over there? And he said, oh, Mom, I'm training Smokey. And I said, oh, okay. What are you training him for? And he said, well, in case Smokey loses a leg, I figure he needs to learn how to balance on three legs. So Tom had been taking his leg up to teach him how to balance on three legs. And my point is, this is kind of the core of my work. Resilience is not something that you're not resilient. Resilience is a practice. It's a practice that we grow and learn over time. So that's kind of at the core of my work. And
Mhm. I love
you
that you
know,
shared.
yeah, it kind of brought me back to a place today where it really came full circle into coming to see you today and reminded me of that. And I'm also a yoga and Pilates teacher. And
Mhm.
so during class, there's a quote that I love to share by Bruce Lee. And you've probably heard this before, but he says that, notice that the stiffest tree
Mhm.
cracks in the wind.
I don't think I've ever heard of that.
And yet, the bamboo and the willow will bend. Even in the strongest winds, they will survive.
Mm.
So I love that quote by martial artist Bruce Lee for many reasons. One is he was known as a tough guy, right?
Yeah,
This is a guy who would like chop blocks, if I'm not mistaken,
yeah.
and really like cut wood. And here he is with this kind of mindful reflection that we can't be hard all the time. That's where things break and crack. That we've got the work to do for us really in resilience is learning how to balance that with the softness that we need
Mhm.
and finding those moments, that right balance between the hard push, right?
Mhm.
We all know about pushing to be resilient and overcoming. And then let's find the drawback and to find, that softness, that suppleness. And
Mm.
that's really where the work for me comes in with the clients. And that's
Yeah.
something that, I see a need for out there.
Mhm. I'll just go back to what you're saying about the dog that you saw with the three legs. It just actually made me think of somebody I met on the trail a while back, and the dog had three legs and was never born with three legs. He unfortunately lost the three legs. And I remember I had my dog Luna at the time, and she tore her both ACLs.
Mm.
And he made a comment about resilience. And actually, like your story made me think about that moment. And he was saying to me, like, they're pretty resilient. Like, if, yeah, they lost a leg, they will get back up how they will, and they'll just keep going. And I remember him talking about our dog no longer with us now, but Luna, he was like, as if you give the proper foundation for her, the physio, all
Mm.
these things, you'll see that she will be resilient and gets herself back up and might not actually need surgery. So we didn't we had a pity mix, and they're known to pull both ACLs at a certain age. And I remember being like, oh, I don't want to put her underneath more trauma, more surgery, all these things, just in case, because she was getting an older pup. And we did the physio route, and everybody thought we were just kind of crazy, but she was so resilient to build herself back up. But we also took that time to do the physio with her too.
Well, it's about breaking norms, right, Brett? So I love that you said everyone thought we were crazy. I think that's kind of right. The way forward is, I agree with you. There was this kind of like, let's just do surgery. Let's just get to it,
Mhm.
cut to the chase and get it over with quickly and move on. That's sort of how I was raised. And so this is sort of that like, my dad was a football coach. And so I grew up a child of the late 80s, early 90s with
Yeah.
a dad who was like, I was the second of two girls, and he brought me out into the backyard and he would have me hit and block over and over again, kind of that mentality of like, toughness, grit, resilience. And I spent a lot of time in the backyard learning how to tackle. I spent a lot of time on those sidelines with him at his game. So I really had a front row seat to that version of
Mhm.
resilience.
Yeah.
And this may be a little bit ahead of your time, but there was a coach during that period called Mike Ditka. He was with the Chicago Bears. Some of your listeners might know about him.
Yeah.
And he was kind of that famous guy who was like, take his team out there, knock him down, and he'd be like, get up, is kind of the mantra, right? Over and over
Mhm.
again. And I remember thinking at an early age, this is what resilience is. You take hit after hit after hit, and no matter how hard you fall, you keep getting back up again. But the more I've studied, the more I've worked with my coaching clients, and the more that science evolves, we
Mhm.
now know that that's actually harmful. It has less to do with the push and more to do with the pauses, right?
Mhm.
And I've seen this version of resilience, this narrative out there that can be helpful in some situations, not all, but
Yeah.
cases like going to war or having something really traumatic happen where you need to run and gather your belongings and get the heck out of there. Those are
Yeah.
different types of responses. But for most of us, life is long, right?
Mhm.
And we are going to ride these cycles of joy, of great things happening in our lives, and really difficult things are going to come our way, and they're not just going to happen once. They're going to
Mhm.
happen over and over again. Loss, grief, divorce, betrayal,
Mhm.
illness, right? All of those things. An injury in sport, or the loss of a job, or right now we're seeing a ton of layoffs and retrenchment. So that
Mhm.
get up mentality can get you so far, but what it does predictably is it leads to burnout, it leads to fatigue, and then we're not resilient in the long term. So I talk more about my clients with building that resilient life, right? So
Mhm.
we're building inner resilience, we're building resilience, we're practicing, but the goal here is a resilient life to get you through that full cycle of the ups and downs.
Mhm. Yeah, and um, when you just said fight, I just kind of thought about like there's the flight, fight, or fawn mechanisms that you can kind of
Mhm.
use in a state of trauma or just even in the state of resilience. So depending on which mechanism you use, it's just really how you can. It's not like to be ashamed if you fawn away in certain areas. It's just how you get back up and position
Mm.
yourself differently.
We need to freeze. You and I have talked about this. There are points in our lives where it's not safe for us to fight,
Mhm.
right? Where we actually need to freeze, where we actually need to
Mhm.
fawn, where we need to take those kind of self preservation moves. So I think it's important to acknowledge that. And also, I think, we've talked about different generational issues in terms of our resilience and how we cope. There is something such as relational trauma, which you're familiar with and we've talked about. My clients, some of whom have suffered abuse when they were kids and they haven't talked about it before, and
Mhm.
they're wondering why they're struggling so much in this circumstance in their 40s, kind of not acknowledging what had happened before.
Mhm.
um, those I think it's sort of like, bracing for that adversity and thinking we can just kind of strong arm our way through it gets us through up to a certain point, and then it doesn't.
And it doesn't serve you. Like you never know when that piece is going to show up in like just kind of like hit you, and then all of a sudden you're just like, oh my goodness. Like I told you I was in trauma with money, and the reason why I took it was because I really want to understand why my clients were struggling with trauma with paying certain things or getting stuck in certain areas. And I was like, I have no trauma with money. And then behold, there it is. Um, but it was such an eye-opening journey to follow. And then now it's from that experience and kind of understanding like the scarcity mindset and wanting to tackle it more. I've kind of now wanting to push myself more out of my comfort zone of how can I face
Mm.
trauma? Because I actually had this conversation with my aunt. She's like, you can't just keep on like putting it underneath the rug, because it's you before you know it, it can come right in front of you, and you're not going to know how to even face it, and or the opportunity to face it will be gone, and you might be stuck and hurt that you haven't faced those certain things of the trauma that you want to face now. And so
Mhm.
I feel like I'm like, okay, let's go.
Right. And that's part of a resilient mindset is I write about this in some work I've done recently with the BMO Vancouver Marathon and the
Mhm.
GranFondo is like, that's how I approach it on the physical front because I'm a marathon runner.
Mhm.
I'm going to do my third world major this year. So I've
Amazing.
really gotten into that lately and it's a long time to run, right? I ran
Yeah.
my first marathon not too long ago. And I will tell you, running for 3.5 hours, 42 kilometers can be really long. And so this curiosity that you kind of talk about, it's like
Mhm.
I saw something in myself and I really want to get into it now.
Mhm.
That's a resilient mindset. You know, I say when my legs are sore on the race course or when I'm training and they just feel tired, I always think, what are my legs trying to tell me right now?
Yeah.
I don't immediately jump to that point where I'm like, I must be tired, must be time to take a break. This is too much for me. I've worked enough with my mindset to be able to do just what you did with this trauma with money, right? It's like, I wonder what this is trying to tell me. And that's the opportunity to grow right there.
Yes. And I know we're both coaches, so we're lifelong learners and always wanting to challenge the narratives more. And what else can we learn? What else can we throw in? Um, I think you've probably heard of this saying before that um, you're, well, kind of like just like the leadership model. You're either born a leader or not born a leader. And I've heard too, like you are born with resilience or not. What do you
Mm.
what's your take on that?
I think that's phony baloney. That's a really mature way of putting it, but I'm trained as I did my master's in behavior, and I've got a training in neuro-based coaching, so
Mhm.
brain-based coaching, and so much of the work that I do is all around that, the neural pathways, right? Nothing is fixed. We can pretty much move anything in the brain. So I firmly disagree with that. I think there's always the opportunity to grow and learn and resilience is that muscle. We talk about practicing it and creating new pathways. So
Mm.
it's a lot of my work in sexual health coaching, but of course, the obvious is athleticism and work with the executives that changing the brain state and building new pathways to learn to grow. Now, I've developed a model kind of that we've talked about, you and I, and it's called the reps model. And I like it because, it's like reps at the gym, even though that's not
Mhm.
my area of it's not my happy place yet. I'm still learning to love the gym, but reps are kind of the model that I came up with after, coaching. I've now got 2 years in this practice and about 350 hours of coaching in sexual health and another 200 just with executives and high performers. And what I did was I talked to a number of experts in the field and also took my work and developed this model called the REPS model that
Mhm.
looks at the determinants of a resilient life. So, what does it take to build a resilient life? It takes our relationships, it takes our emotional resilience, it takes physical resilience, and then it takes the systems and strategies to be
Mhm.
able to scaffold all of that into something that's sustainable. So, um, yeah, I
Yeah.
that's sort of a pathway forward that helps me to work with individuals, right? If I've got a model that I can kind of use broadly, then when we get an individual in and we do that intake and I look one on one and what they need, then we're able to get deeper into, in some cases, changing those neural pathways or opening them up and making deep change.
Yeah. Maybe are you able to dig in a little bit deeper on each section of the model?
I would love nothing more. You're just going to have to cut me off because I get kind of excited about this stuff. So you've got to jump
That's
in,
fine.
okay? Yeah, so I love that you started too. The first one is relational, and so I think this is all part of making sure that we manage adversity and that we build robustness in our lives. And relational is an interesting one for me because, having worked with a lot of top performers and athletes,
Yeah.
there's a really strong narrative out there, and high performers will always kind of have that mindset of, I got to figure it all out on my own. right? And think of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I have to prove that I can do this on my own. I have to show my worth and my capability. And so I'm going to figure this all out. Very strong tendency for entrepreneurs, right? To be able to have that mindset. And so I think there is that narrative out there that the top performers are doing it on their own and they're the hero of their own story. But we know that resilience isn't a solo sport, right? To truly build resilience for life, which is what our goal is, and to have it be sustainable, it has to be built in relationships, not in isolation. We're better off for it that way.
Yeah.
And relational, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you. With like the thing for me anyways that really popped out was the imposter syndrome. Like as anyone listening, imposter syndrome is overall thinking that you're not capable, competent to succeed in anything that's maybe put in front of you, even though you probably have proved time and time again that you've done it.
Absolutely. It's something I battle with all the time. And I know it's quite a common thing, right? For performers and for entrepreneurs. But let's get into a little bit about the relational aspect of it. It's a big piece of my work. And so we often start off with kind of a values assessment in my sessions. And then we get into kind of a relational interpersonal assessment. So we need to know who's in your quarter. So how are they showing up for you, right? So who have you got in your sort of relationship group? And I'm talking friendships, right? Work connections, romantic partners, and your families. And then we kind of ask who these people are, and then we sort of look at what categories they fall into. And the science proves, 3 to 5 friends is kind of an ideal. 3 to 5 close friends is what you need to have satisfaction and feel supported. So in my work, I always talk about, are these relationships emotionally safe for you? And are they reciprocal in nature? So is there sort of the back and forth? So we, oftentimes we just think these relationships just happen because we've got these categories that are, again, based on psychologists' research, lifelong friends, we've got close friends, we've got social friends, and then we've got our acquaintances. So these relationships fall into all different kind of categories. And it's figuring out who you've got in each of those quadrants, making moves as needed for your growth to ensure that, hey, if you've got someone who is you're looking to grow or you're looking to build resilience or to make changes after a divorce or after grief, after loss, after a job change, you've got someone in the acquaintance bucket. Then we look at, what if that person were to move closer into the friend bucket? They've got qualities you really admire. They've got values that they share with you. And so we're constantly kind of evaluating and doing that. And so if I think about really specifically, I'll get down into kind of the nitty gritty here. When I'm doing my work with my sexual health clients that live your prime. So in that case, I'm dealing with clients who are experiencing sexual dysfunction. And we do a lot of one-on-one work to help them kind of overcome those obstacles. I work with a medical clinic who prescribes medication, and the medication is proven to be 50% more effective when you couple talking and coaching with it. So that's my role. And we're doing a lot of work on mindfulness, on personal and physical health. But what it always comes down to is that this self-improvement, this resilience building doesn't happen in a vacuum. And so my clients need the conditions to have a happy, fulfilling, satisfying, and healthy sex life. And if those conditions aren't there, the work that we do together is going to fall flat on its face. It's not going to go anywhere. And so, so that's a big part. That relational piece is so important to have that in play as well. So, and for high performers, and for executives, for CEOs, think of like a runner and a golfer and a cyclist, right? You're going to tell me those are solo sports. Those are all people doing it alone. When I ran the Boston Marathon last year, I was moved to tears at the end of the race. And now I was someone who struggled at the end of the race, a story too long to get into here, but I needed to be supported. And I had this little, this guy, this wonderful man who I didn't know, take me under the arm and get me across the finish line. Because if you fall down, you will go immediately to a medical tent and you can't finish the race. And when I finished and I was standing there with my girlfriend and we were kind of drinking a lot of liquid and kind of recovering and watching this beautiful scene, this flow of people going by, all supported by people on the course who helped them get to that finish line. There is no such thing as a solo sport. I think I mentioned that at the beginning. We all need others in order to perform at our best. So building resilience and getting to that place is not a solo endeavor. That's why the relationships is in the reps model.
That makes so much sense, because we're humans. We need people around us, even introverts, extrovert, introverts. Like, no matter what you classify yourself as, we need that human connection. We need that connection on whichever level it looks like to you to drive us, I believe.
100%. And knowing that about yourself. And I think we're about to get into that, into the emotional space, right?
Yeah.
It's a really great segue for the next reps category, to build emotional resilience as a part of your resilience for life strategy.
Yeah.
Knowing that about yourself, Brittany, I love that you said that. And introverts need it too, right? Introverts need it just as much as extroverts, and you're just going to find it in a different way. So your relational intelligence, the plan that we do for your relationships, might look a little bit different, right?
Yeah. And no model really fits with somebody else, because their needs are always different compared to somebody else.
Absolutely.
Do you want to go into the next piece of the model?
Absolutely. So we're going to get into that emotional resilience piece.
Yeah.
So the second piece of the tool. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. And this one's important. I mean, they're all important, but emotional resilience is something that, we're going to respond to life stressors, how we feel our emotions without being hijacked by them and being overwhelmed by them. And it's building that psychological flexibility. So the flexibility of being able to understand our emotions, find a place for them. And I'm going to touch on something that you mentioned earlier in just a minute. So I think you're going to like this one. And as you know, by now, I was not raised to really talk about emotions, right? And so the narrative that I grew up with was suck it up, buttercup. My dad would always say, don't let them see you cry, Kristen. Don't let them see that they got you down, right? And, push it aside. And so we think about that Mike Ditka, that coach from the Chicago Bears. He would say, get up, that voice in your head when you're out of touch with your emotional landscape. And when you're not giving yourself the grace to build resilience in your emotions, sounds a lot like that. Push, come on. Don't be a baby about this. Just keep going, right? Those are the voices that my clients are hearing loud and clear, that they've either developed through maybe society, right? And maybe through their upbringings, but they're very harmful. And when we push things back, so again, think of that like, come on, don't deal with that. Like, just keep it back. It's like you just mentioned earlier. I remember being in gym class, and if you had to carry the basketballs into the gym class at the end of class, you were faced with this really tall shelf in my gym. And I was tiny. Like, I was all skin and bones back then. I was a Nordic ski racer. I did not have a lot of meat on my bones. And I remember taking that big bag, and it was terrifying because there were the volleyballs, there were the footballs, and then I had the big basketballs, right? And so you had to like sling this thing over, and then I would shove it, and then I'd run out as quickly as possible and shut the doors. Is what you just said, Brittany. And it's like I'm holding it down, right? I've got it all in. And so when we don't deal with our emotions, when we push them back like that, eventually what happens is you can only hold so much. Right? It just comes through. What happens when we put them away? There's a difference between pushing things back and really taking the time to put things away. And so real emotional resilience is about learning to accept and make space for what you're feeling. So acknowledging that. And in the case, I can hear the objectors already saying, well, no, that's feeling sorry for myself. There's a difference, right? Just acknowledging, not wallowing. If you've got to wallow for a bit, hey, take your own permission to do that and to really feel through your emotions, but taking that time and really honoring the emotional self. Now, because I use this language and I work with so many men in my practice, I'm going to say there are times where even just using those words, people who are listening are like, I don't understand what she's talking about. And I've been there. I'm someone who couldn't name my emotions well into my 20s. And so the work that I do with my clients is really about, how does your body feel? Right? So acknowledging, if you can't tell me how you feel in words, I want you to tell me how you feel in your body. And so that's a bit of the work that we do too, is like opening up.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like I definitely struggle with communicating that too, because it's not normal that we talked about emotions in my home as well. So I noticed, like, with my kiddos, I'm like, try to ask more questions. Try to, like, just don't assume, or like be that curious friend. I feel like sometimes it's just like a automatic, like, shut it down kind of situation sometimes when you're built into that kind of setting. But like, I'm ready for change. I'm ready to break up the model, and like talking about like the different kind of traumas. What does that, it shows up differently for everybody, depending on the state of your body and how your emotional state is too. And that could be that trigger. So yeah, I love, yeah, all that you're saying.
No, and I love that you're going there, right? It's a lot to kind of, and this is that what we talked about was creating that space and distance. Like, I'm just going to lay it out there. Brittany's like an incredibly successful entrepreneur, and you're juggling 2 young kids at home. For you to say, I want to take the space to be able to do better, that is like hugely important. And I just want to acknowledge that. So I'm very impressed. And it takes practice. And you're going to mess up. You're going to be that mom. You're going to be that parent. You're going to be that CEO. You're going to be that athlete who just snaps at someone one day, and you're going to be like mortified thinking, I thought I had this. I thought I was doing the work, right? So it's a bit of forward and back. There are some tools that I use kind of grounded in, again, science, and that I've trained in. Acceptance and commitment therapy is one of my favorites. And so that's sort of teaching us to stop fighting with the difficult thoughts, right? To stop fighting against them. The most damaging things that I hear in terms of damage to mental health, and the clients that I see who suffer more from depression, anxiety, and rumination, they're the ones who are saying things like, I know I shouldn't feel this, but, right? It's silly to say this, but, you know, so they're the ones who are denying what they're actually feeling or fighting against it. So instead, we learn to make space for those and to allow a little bit of gentleness instead of suppressing the emotion, you know, kind of creating the opportunity to acknowledge them, unhook from them. So my thoughts are not me, right? So learning that space, learning a tool called diffusion, and then building out the space and time to pause before reacting, right? I bring in tools from sports psychology. That's just who I am. And so this is something kind of unique to my model, but I bring in those tools, and visualization is one of my favorite ones.
Tell me more.
So have you used it before?
Visualization, yes and no.
Okay. Sounds good. Let me get into it. I first learned it when I was really young. I was really lucky. I had a cross-country ski coach who was Finnish. He was from Finland. This old guy named Heikki Kinnunen. It's a mouthful to pronounce.
Yes.
He would have us before each race. He would have us lay our heads down on our pillow, and we had to imagine the cross-country ski race that we were going to go on. Now, I was like, you know, I was quite a real go-getter when I was younger, and I was pretty good at cross-country skiing, and I'd done enough of it. So we'd lay down at bed, and I took it very seriously. And I would lay down on my pillow the night before a race, and I would visualize the course, no matter where we were. We had skied it that day. And I would imagine taking the turns and up and downs and the climbs and everything. And then I layered it in my own way. So as would happen over time, I remember one race in particular where I broke my ski pole. When you break your ski pole, you got to ski without a pole, right? So I had to finish the rest of that cross-country ski race without a pole. So my new, and I was like, oh, I should have been prepared for this, right? So my new strategy, you know, think about Smokey James and training the little puppy on the floor, right, with 3 legs, was to go through and visualize, now I do my race courses, or now I do a talk that I'm about to give, or something that is kind of a high stakes moment. And I visualize something going wrong, and then I visualize how I recover from it. So that's part of my thing as well with visualization. 3 different tools that I use with visualization, and I used all of these last night before coming here today.
Yes.
One is called creative visualization. And I won't have time to go into details about them, but I am doing a session through Eventbrite for high performers. So that's running at the end of April. So one is creative visualization, visualizing something big that's kind of blocking you, and you work with your energy to make it shrink or disappear.
Yeah.
The second one is process visualization.
Okay.
So how I do things, think Tiger Woods. If he's on a flight headed to his next competition, He is doing process visualization training for 20 minutes on that flight. So he is going through what it takes for him to set up, hit the ball, and work through something that he's having a problem with. And he will repeat that over and over in his mind's eye. And then there's outcome visualization. This one most people are familiar with. So this is like breaking that finish line tape, right? We all know the picture of like the arms up, the victory run, and you're breaking the tape. So it's picturing a really positive outcome. And so, yeah, building that resilient mindset involves practicing when we're not able to physically practice, but giving our mind enough practice. So visualization is a tool that I use for resilience with athletes, with executives, and even in the bedroom. So for folks who have suffered sexual dysfunction for a really long time, we can actually make really big gains in visualizing a really positive outcome with their partner. For someone who has had sexual trauma, same thing, we can get to that point. So yeah.
It's amazing. I'm going, anyone watching, I'm just going through the different websites, going back and forth. I love all of that. No, I'd say I visualize, but not to that extent. My visualization is like, when I hear somebody talk about their business, like I can visualize, like this is maybe my superpower, ADHD stuff. I can visualize the whole business from top to bottom. Like I got you.
Wow.
And like that's my take on visualization, but yours, yeah, I like that piece too, because like just to come into to prep, I do visualize, but I get a little bit like nervous when I read off. Like I don't like reading off a script, like I told you. Like I have my notes because my brain, I get kind of freaked out if I can't say something. Dyslexia might play like a trick on me, and I'm like, oh, what is that word again? And then I kind of panic, and then I go down this spiral. So me, for my piece to overcome it is like, yes, practice to over and over again. Like I talked to Alana about saying certain words on our show that I was nervous to say because I didn't want somebody to think that I don't understand our culture, like, or I felt really like anxious.
Yeah. So that's like, again, getting into that creative visualization. What is that energy there? Right. And I point to my heart, but some people feel it in their stomachs or in their legs or in their minds.
Yeah.
So it's that rooting into like, what's that feeling? Like what's causing it? Is it a fear? Is it a, imposter syndrome? Is it like something that's sitting there? And that visualization training, if you do it, enough times and in a set amount of time, you can really work at reducing that. So it is part of that kind of, emotional resilience. Is really about creating that space, naming it to tame it, right? So saying, I noticed this about myself. I wish I could do better with this about myself. I had a client say he thought he was like just having anger management issues, right? And he'd been told that by his partner. And so kind of coming to terms with the idea that he actually didn't have names to name all of his feelings or what he was feeling. So immediately when she'd be like, how are you feeling about that? He would say, angry, right? And he just didn't have the language. So moving forward in a way that's really personal and just aligned with who you truly are, and just giving that grace. And so we do that. This is not a one session type thing. This is over time.
And I love that you keep saying the grace part, because for all my reoccurring listeners, that's like the one thing I always say. One is that no one's perfect. And looking at perfectionists as something like, how can we kind of quiet that? Because no one is perfect. We all have flaws. And that's kind of the premise of the show too, that we are all worthy to be here, no matter of our age, gender, we are all worthy. And then the other piece too is grace. Because as a mom of two little ones, building a business and doing all these other things, sometimes I forget to give myself grace. And I've molded into the factor of, it's okay to give myself grace. It's okay to ask for help. I'm not weak to ask for help. And like learning and shifting that mind frame so much more is so much powerful, because I feel like I can finally take a step forward too, having those mind shifts.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you brought that up. I think that's so important. And, we talked about that. The folks who I see are struggling the most are the ones who are denying their need for the opportunity to experience a true emotion, right? And so
Mhm.
giving yourself grace is not making excuses,
Nope.
right? And I think there's that mindset is like, I'm just making excuses for myself. No,
Yeah.
you're acknowledging that you're feeling something in this moment and that it's valid. And
Mhm.
then you're able to pause, take a breath, regroup, and carry on,
Mhm.
right? Whereas if you hammer yourself and you are just not allowing yourself to actually feel what you're authentically feeling, it's very hard then to find new resources to carry on,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in society, we're just so known to kind of step in, go, 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 go too. There's no, it like if you say that you need a pause or anything like that, sometimes people are like, huh?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah,
What do you mean you need a pause? What do you mean you need a break? Like we have to go, we have to
mhm.
get this done. I think in society we're just so like always on the go. And maybe we need to take time to learn how to accept a little bit of those extra pauses, those extra breaks. Just like when you're learning something new, if you're just onboarding a new employee, say, it's okay that they need to take that moment to find what their best way to shine in that moment. They might learn something differently than what you're presenting them to.
Absolutely. And it's that compassion piece, knowing that we work with all different neurodiverse and different groups of people, right, who have different needs. The inner work there is kind of around the values assessment that we do early on. So being really clear, I think we talk a lot about boundaries, right? You can see those like TikTok worthy Instagram reels all about like boundaries. What
Yes.
boundaries really is at the end of the day is really being fully aware of your values, your individual values. It's not about saying no, it's about being aware of your individual values and being so clear on them that you know what they are and you can express those to someone else, right? And so, just what you talked about, it's like saying, you know what, I do my best work if I take a pause, and quality work, taking the time for yourself, being consistent, those might be some of your values. So that when you say to someone, I'm going to take a pause for a minute, then I'm going to get back to you,
Mhm.
there's no concern about whether or not they're going to be upset or if they push back. There's just that clarity from you. So, really equipping my clients with that right from the get go is kind of
Mhm.
part of their toolkit of having this resilience in their life and being able to move forward.
Yeah.
And then, the next piece, of course, is the physical resilience. So, we're
Yeah.
building that. And it's not what you think.
Mhm.
So, you're like picturing weightlifting, right?
Yeah.
Or like I know people look at me and they're like, "Oh my god, she must just like run all the time." Not true. And most of my runs are actually really, really slow. I use my runs to kind of help me. I started running for my mind,
Mhm.
really. And then in the end, I started running at first because my mind needed it. I needed a break from single parenting. I needed a break from some of the things going on in my life. And the funny thing is that when I crashed
Mhm.
and broke my body, right? I needed it more than ever, and it's really what powered me through. So, physical resilience involves both. It involves your physical body, but also training your nervous system, which is part of your
Mhm.
physical body to endure. So I think this one is very timely and really important. It applies to everyone who's coming in on this call and all of my clients, sports, high performance, my sexual health clients, parents, and everyone. At the heart of it, we want to build that robust life where you have long term strength, right? And think about movement, breath work, recovery, and creating peak performance habits. So, movement, regular exercise, we want to be moving our body. We want to get our body to a place where it feels physically strong and physically well so that it can handle the things that we have coming our way. And recovery is just as important because without rest, sleep, and recovery, using techniques like breath work, and I use progressive muscle relaxation, which is a physical body response where we tighten the muscles and then we let them go. We tighten the muscles and we let them go. So there's
Interesting.
physical activations that we do to restore our energy so that we can keep going. What I've seen in my work, it's so clear in sexual health. Sexual health provides this like floodlight into what's going on in society because it's our most vulnerable state. It
Yeah.
combines our emotions, our physical self, intimacy, relationships, right? and our neurological responses. And so hyperarousal is something we're all struggling right now. And what I mean by that is we're in a hyperaroused state. We're constantly on alert. Have I checked my messages? I have 5 different platforms. I have Notion, I have Slack. I've got, right? I've got Instagram. I've got, the kids' school emails are coming. I've got Outlook. I've got Teams for my sexual health clients. I've got Ring Central. I've got Zoom. I mean, the list could go on. We all know what I'm talking about here. We're in this constant state of hyperarousal and always available. And so our biggest challenge as a society is the work that we do to kind of come down from that and manage it. It's not going away. We need to actively learn how to manage our arousal state. And so I'm going to give you an example. Michael Phelps. Do you know him? He's like a swimmer, right? An incredible swimmer. And so he was, I like his story. I like what his coach did. I'm actually more impressed with his coach, I think. His coach was a guy by the name of Bowman. And he, during training, Bowman would take the last 5 to 10 minutes of Michael Phelps's practices, and he would take his goggles away. So he would say, okay, Michael, you got to swim in this like chlorine laden water without your goggles for the last 5 to 10 minutes. So why? It was like stinging eyes, right? So uncomfortable. But he was preparing Michael for unforeseen circumstances. So what Michael had to do, of course, you have to pivot. You have to adjust. Your body is not experiencing the same conditions that you're used to. How do you get through something like that? I wasn't in the pool with Michael Phelps, but I will tell you he probably used mindset, mindfulness, really zeroing in on the present moment, each hand stroke, right? Thinking about his kicks, thinking about the end of the pool, trying to visualize where that was, thinking to himself, I have done this 100 times before. I could do this in my sleep, right? These are the things that are going through Michael Phelps's mind during training. And then guess what? It's the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and he's in his last competition. It's butterfly. I think it's like 200-meter butterfly. And this guy is on track to set the world record for most medals at an Olympic Games.
I remember this, actually.
Do you remember this? And his goggles leaked. His goggles ruptured, and he lost his goggles. And guess what? He could have lost his head, right? He could have just completely blown up, and he didn't. He came through to win, and then got 8 Olympic medals that games and holds the world record for most.
Amazing.
So it's that's the mind-body connection. That's the piece of the physical piece. And what makes it so important is not just the physical body. The training is important. Doing something so many times that you can say, I've done this before. Things have gone wrong before. I know what to do. And then there's the nervous system and the arousal. So the 2 most important pieces of my work in this are mindfulness. So I use mindfulness to help folks get through and to be able to zero in on that present moment. It's a powerful, powerful tool. I use it for all of my clients. And it's a lot to get into, and I don't think we're going to have time today. But and then the other piece is VO2 max. So VO2 max is how much oxygen you have flowing through your blood. And it is critical for our overall health and longevity. You will start to lose your VO2 max by the time you're 40, and it will keep going down no matter what you do. So I was lucky enough to get this insight when I was 45. I met someone who was retired, and he taught me about this. And what it's done is it's not just because I want to run marathons. It's going to make the difference between how long I live and my quality of life as I get older. If I'd started now at this age, I would be so far behind the game, and I would be losing already. You can't catch it back up once you get a certain age. For my sexual health clients, sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I just going to say that's so interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it really is like, something to put first and foremost when you're looking at how long do I want to live and how healthy do I want to be as I age. So those are the kind of the 2 most important. We can get into like strength is really important. There's lots of like, the list could go on, and I'm waiting for the comments to blow up, right? Because I know there are so many other factors here, but this is a short radio show, so I've got short time. 2 things would be VO2 max for the physical well-being of my clients, especially those sexual health clients. Orgasm and climax depend on the blood flow in your body for men and women. Women need the blood to flow to the clitoris quickly, efficiently, And as you age, that slows down unless you're very physically fit. For
Mhm.
men, it's the same thing. The two chambers of your penis need to fill up with blood fully in order to get an erection. And if
Mm.
you are not fit, if you have belly fat, if your heart cannot pump enough to spare, you are
Mhm.
going to lose that. So those are kind of critical pieces to the work in physical resilience that I do with all of my clients, athletes, and in
Mhm.
sexual health. And then the mindful fitness piece. So being able to reduce that hyperarousal and really zero
Interesting. Learn something new every day.
in.
So I love having this show.
So I think that's it. In terms of physical health, I mean, really, it's about creating a body that can endure, recover, and thrive, really. And so it's like endure, recover, and then perform. So
Mhm.
those are the critical pieces with physical resilience.
Amazing. Well, I'm just looking at time. We have one more to go through, don't we?
We
Yes.
sure do. And it's a short one. So this is
Okay.
going to be great. I know. So we can still get to your last few questions here. The last piece is systems and strategies. And I think we've covered those in kind of the stuff we've been talking about. But that's sort of my role as, an executive coach by training and what I bring into play. There are two tools that I absolutely love. I bring, my experience from my behavioral science background and then also the brain-based coaching. One of my favorite frameworks comes from James Clear's Atomic Habits. Have you read?
That sounds really familiar.
Oh, his famous quote is, "You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems."
Mm.
So we
Yeah.
need to put those systems in play, right? There's a science to all of this. And if we're going to build a resilient life, then we need to make sure that we've got the systems and habits in place. And so we work with things like habit stacking, the environment in which you're in, and the different kind of cues, right?
Yeah.
Behavior tracking and tiny wins over time. So making sure that we are stacking and consistently doing things every day.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'd say that willpower when it comes to resilience is highly overrated. I know David Goggins has a huge following and I appreciate so much of what he does, but it can't just be based on sheer willpower alone. It's really, I think, systems are where we get into sustainable resilience in terms of people.
Well, if you just kind of look at it from a business perspective, because I do a lot of systems and things like that all set up. So we look at you as the CEO of the business, because really you should be the CEO of the business in a way versus doing all the other busy work. So to be the top CEO, you need to look at how we can utilize systems in place to make sure that things are really systemized, optimized for you. And then we kind of like break down the onions even further. But really, at the end of the day, we want you at the top and looking at your mindset and working on these kind of things. And so it totally makes sense that this is part of the model because you need to have some systems too in your personal side too. Like for me, just at the general sense, like I wouldn't be able to keep track of life without a calendar.
I agree. And one of the things when I've got clients who are building new relationships or building back. So some of the, interesting clients I have, they're empty nesters, right?
Yeah.
And so they've gone through the full cycle. They've done the whole like kids in the house, things are intense and all that stuff. And the
Mm-hmm.
kids are gone. And then what do we do? So we work on rituals a lot, right? What rituals do you have with your partner? Have you built those in? And when you've got the young kids, the rituals like bath time, bedtime, books. Right? So it's kind of reframing that and
Mm-hmm.
building in new rituals. So those are just a small example of systems and strategies that we put into place for
I
that.
love that. Well, we're almost at time. Is there any last minute advice, thoughts that you want to share with our listeners today?
Well, I just think it was just such a nice conversation, Brittany, and I'm so appreciative. I really loved our dynamic and really enjoyed our time. One takeaway I think for folks is, just what we talked about. It's that idea that resilience isn't something that you are, it's not fixed, it's something that you practice. And so, practicing self care, nourishing your physical, emotional, relational, and sexual health requires that full balance: mind, body, spirit, and systems. And really, just if I could leave one takeaway, it would be, small, consistent actions. Start with something small today,
Mm-hmm.
creating that space for self-acceptance and being gentle with yourself.
Yes, I love that so much. I can't agree more. If you just need to start somewhere, start better starting than not starting at all.
Mm-hmm.
And you know those New Year's goals where everyone's like, I'm going to go to the gym 6 times. just start somewhere. You don't have to start 6 times, just maybe 15 minutes in a day that you're going to do X, Y, and Z, or once a week. Try to break them into small little chunks because I think they're just a little bit more attainable. And then you can build on that. Like for me personally, I find it, like you mentioned about going to the gym, it's so hard for me to go to the gym because there's some things in there I just don't like, maybe from a mindset perspective, why I struggle. But what I do love is working out with friends. So instead of going to the gym, maybe let's just work out with friends. So there's those little minor tweaks that you can make, figuring out what you do like and what you don't like, and then making those tweaks to mold in with you.
Absolutely. Create something that works for you.
100%. Thank you so much.
I think that's great. And just finding one thing. What's one thing that really gets under your skin that you're really not okay with, right, in your life that's causing you friction? Find something that's kind of rocking you and taking some small steps to address it and doing better.
100%. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was such an honor to have you. I was so excited to have you on the show. I told you it would go by super fast.
We didn't have enough time.
We didn't have all the time to go through all the questions, but you'll be back, so no worries. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Breaking Norms, Building Dreams. A big thank you to United Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network. Next week, we have Vanessa on the show. Non-for-profit organization, and she's actually one of my clients, so I'm excited to also have Vanessa on the show. With that, please come next week with some more questions. Everyone, remember, your journey is unique and your worth is unquestionable. Thank you, everyone.